Hi guys, welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight. I'm going to jump in briefly here. I think everything looks good. It looks like I am live here. Let me know if you can't hear me. I had some microphone issues earlier today. So just let me know in the chat box if you can or cannot hear me. I hope you can. It seems like you can. So let me make sure that I am signed on to Instagram. Yes, I am. It's working. Wonderful. Twitter. Yep, we are good to go. And I see you guys signing in. Welcome to the chat, guys. I will acknowledge all of you once you sign on. Let me jump in briefly to why this conversation today, and let me clarify what this conversation is all about. So last week we talked about high conflict people in families. Sorry, guys. I think I moved my laptop and it disconnected me for a minute. Last week, we talked about high conflict people and, individuals who are just really difficult to deal with. It's hard to communicate with them. It's hard to find some common ground with them. They're very, very difficult people to get through to. A lot of high conflict people tend to go the fighting, confrontational, argumentative way. They don't know how to peaceably go about things. They don't know how to have a healthy conversation, and they don't know how to make matters better or at least settle them. They kind of add to the situation and exaggerate matters to levels that it just doesn't need to be at. And in the end, however, this is what we talked about last week. In the end, they lose because they end up showing other people and showing you that they're unstable. They're high conflict. So you're not going to be able to have any kind of calm conversation with them, And sometimes these kind of individuals, they go so far that they begin outplaying their hand. They just show everybody their entire hand. I am a fool. I am foolish. I am immature. I get angry easy. I escalate easily. And then I end up feeling stupid at the end. So that's high conflict people. But in tonight's live chat, I'm going to go to the chat box and welcome all of you. In tonight's live chat, I'm going to tweak the high conflict view just a little bit and introduce you to a psychological theory known as the high expressed emotion theory. The high expressed emotion theory. And basically what that theory is that in families where there's a person who has some kind of issues. So it could be trauma, it could be PTSD, complex PTSD, it could be severe depression, it could be schizophrenia, it could be anxiety disorders, it could be OCD, whatever it is. In families where there's an individual that has some kind of challenge, the family has a very high expressed emotional level within the family. They scream and they yell, they're angry, they're ferocious in their expression of their emotions and in their anger. They're hostile, they're critical. And so high expressed emotion, which I'm going to break this down for you tonight, high expressed emotion can within a family can actually cause you to regress and make it very hard for you to push ahead if you don't have the right tools. So I'm going to also give you at the end of this live chat some ideas on how to survive these kind of family members. Let me go to the chat box, and I'm so sorry. It looks like I'm frozen again. I have no idea what's going on. I've had tech issues all day with my camera. I think it's overheating. If we have issues, I may have to restart, but God forbid, hopefully not. Let me just welcome all of you to the live chat. Truth for you today. I always get your screen name just twisted up, so I apologize for that. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you tonight. Dawn 1, hello and welcome. I also see Elizabeth. Hello. I meant to put you guys on the screen here. Live Life. Hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight. Fairy Girl with the Dabs. Hello and welcome. Napalm 1334, welcome to the chat. Glad to see you tonight. Cherries Jubilee, hello and welcome. I also see Lou S. Hello and welcome to the chat. I don't remember seeing you. You might be a new live person tonight, so welcome. Glad to have you. Yanni Body, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat as well. And Nancy R. Yeah, so glad you got a notification. Yeah. I didn't think you guys would. So maybe YouTube is doing its job tonight. It's good. Wonderful. Tammy Nicely, hello and welcome. I actually spell my name that way too, Tami. When I'm lazy or I'm too tired to spell Tamara. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. I also see Mark Taylor. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Melissa Reeps, hello. Yes, you finally caught a live chat. That's why sometimes when I have to reschedule for Saturday, I'm like, I'm going to see some new people tonight because it's a Saturday, So welcome. So glad to have you. I'm going to go through just a few more people briefly, then we're going to jump back in. Sean Hazel, welcome to the chat. So glad to have you tonight. Says great content. Helped me a lot with my emotional EQ. Somebody help me with what EQ is. So let me explain briefly, okay? And you guys can laugh at this. I am horrific when it comes to acronyms, mnemonics, things like that. So one time, somebody on my chat a couple years ago said LOL, and I had to pause for a minute. I'm like, LOL? Then it took me a good second, and I thought, oh, okay, laugh out loud. So EQ, it'll come to me. Somebody help me with that. Welcome. I'm still glad to have you. Lisa Ann, hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Says, hello, I've watched your videos before, but this is my first time on live chat. Glad to have you and welcome. So glad to see you. Highly volatile. Yes, absolutely. They are highly volatile. These individuals who are high conflict, or there's a family with high expressed emotion. Let me just welcome you, Robert Pukey Ray. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Emerald Jack 4200. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Says, hi, Tamara. Thank you so much for posting this information. Your videos have been very helpful. You're welcome. And thank you for that comment. Very, very glad that this is helpful to you. Penny C, welcome to see you. Welcome to see you. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Welcome. I'm going to tell you what my brain is like it is today. I have been through it over the past couple of hours because that's one of the reasons why I had to reschedule the live chat. But I'll share that later on tonight. T Mac, hello and welcome. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight. Okay, guys. B, hello, welcome. I just saw you. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. And Moonlit Cabin. Ooh, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Okay, just briefly before I jump back into the content, the reason I had to cancel yesterday's live chat was because I was in the process of taking a 5 to 6 hour long examination, which tests almost everything that I have learned in this field, so that I could provide ongoing psychotherapy across the nation. So not just consultations, but provide you guys and other people with services from my practice, from me across the nation. And so the examination took literally 5 to 6 hours and I nearly collapsed. So yesterday I was like, I'm sorry guys, there's a good reason for me canceling last minute. I see my camera froze again. Guys, I honestly think that my camera gets warmed up and it just stops acting normal. I'll try to get through this. We'll try to get through this. So that's in a nutshell. That's why I had to cancel and reschedule for today. So I'm hoping that I get a chance to provide some of you with ongoing psychotherapy. You guys are always asking, when are you going to see me or when can you see me? So feel free to email me. I'm happy to put you on my wait list. All right, guys, let me jump into the content here, okay? High expressed emotion. As I stated at the very beginning of the live chat, high expressed emotion is the concept in the field of psychology that explains families where there is intensity. There's emotional intensity, and there's 3 important components. The first component of a family that is very high conflict, they have very high expression of emotions, meaning that most emotions are not hidden. They are outward, they are loud, they are highly displayed within a family. So the first thing that you're likely to see in a family where there's high expressed emotion is criticism. The criticism is either of you, it's either of something that you've done or something that you do, or it's of you and any kind of problem that you may be facing. So trauma, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, PTSD, whatever, you get blamed, you get criticized. Other people get criticized who support you. There's a lot of negativity coming your way in these particular families. Aside from criticism is hostility. There's hostility at the foundation of these kind of families with high expressed emotion. No one knows how to kind of step behind the line and just calmly approach situations. It's automatic hostility and criticism. Let me give you an example. So let's say, for example, your mom is just very, very critical of you since adolescence. We'll say adolescence. Nothing you wear that she likes, nothing you do she approves of, nobody you date or you've married she approves of. She doesn't like your music choice. She doesn't care for the books you read. She doesn't like the friends you hang out with. She doesn't like your style, doesn't care for how you talk, doesn't like your hair, whatever. Highly critical and very insecure kind of a mother. I'll put it that way. So let's say that's your mom. Your dad is the one who has bipolar disorder. He's yelling and screaming and threatening and cursing and really making you feel unsafe within the family home. So now you've got two parents who are highly emotional. Here's where high expressed emotion comes in. Let's say you do something, your mom is highly critical, she's insecure, your dad has bipolar disorder and he's very, very raging. He likes to rage and yell and scream. So you have these two dysfunctional parents. You accidentally slip up and do something wrong. Instead of mom and dad approaching you in a calm way, they approach you by yelling and screaming, threatening you, telling you not to treat them a certain way, yelling and arguing with you so loud that everybody else on side of the outside of the home can hear it. Both parents approach you and aggress you at the same time. Nobody knows how to just step back and walk away. So it's the three of you in this really intense emotional situation, and there's nobody to calm it down. That's an example of a family with high expressed emotion. Now, can you become a part of that? Yes, because you've got two parents who are emotional and they're coming after you, right? Mom's highly critical and insecure, and dad is raging, angry, and hostile. And so you're likely to fall into that trap yourself and become emotional. So you may start screaming or yelling or even pulling your hair. I once had a highly emotional family in my office a couple of years ago, and the child was in the middle. She was 12 years old. Mom was, I think, 50, dad was 56. So she had older parents, and they just didn't know how to deal with the 12-year-old. So mom and dad are screaming in my office. I'm trying to calm them down. The 12-year-old literally grabs her hair and she starts pulling her hair down, crying and screaming and just having like a shaking fit, a breakdown, but she has hair in her hand. So she pulled her hair out, just pulled her hair out. And then when she's anxious, she goes into what's called trichotillomania, which is pulling your eyelashes, right? Your eyebrows, your hair. She just couldn't help it. And so this poor baby, this poor 12-year-old could barely survive in the midst of two very emotionally driven and emotionally intense and chaotic parents. And so that poor child was I'm going to put it this way, very much a victim. I'll put it that way, very much a victim. So this is what you're likely to see. Now, criticism and hostility, that's an example that we just talked about. But there's also another component to high expressed emotion, families with high expressed emotion. The acronym for this is HEE. HEE. So you can actually Google that, learn a little bit more about that, for yourself, so that you can kind of, read through the lines and see, was this me growing up? Am I still experiencing that as an adult? But the other component to high expressed emotion is emotional over involvement. So let's say, for example, you have a very narcissistic mother. This mother is so highly critical and so afraid of judgment and what other people think of her and you as her child and your family, that she kind of over involves herself in your life, maybe living through you, maybe dating through you, right? Maybe, trying to tell you what to wear all the time, how to think, how to feel, what to say, what not to say, how to act, right? How not to act. This parent is over involved and very emotionally over involved and very narcissistic. And these kind of parents actually can drive you crazy, right? For lack of a clinical term, because you're just being you. And this kind of a parent who's emotionally over involved in your world may be prodding you at every turn. No, 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 don't say that. Don't do that. Nope, don't do that either. Nope, don't talk to that person. Oh, no, don't wear that. Oh, why'd you make that face? Oh my God, don't talk like that. It is constant. And I've seen this, excuse me, guys, I have something in my eye. I've seen this a lot in families that are in my office, and I feel so sad for the children because they are held hostage by the critical judgments of the parent and by the parent's insecurity. So let me break this down briefly one last time, and I'm going to give you a demonstration of what this actually looks like. So in a family where there's high expressed emotion, you can either have a very critical parent who judges every single thing that you do and everybody else. You could have a very hostile parent who's always angry. I apologize, guys. I saw my camera blink again. Who's always angry, who's always just raging and doesn't know how to calm down. These kind of hostile parents, they don't know how to manage their own insecurity and their anger. So what happens? They go from 0 to 1,000 in a matter of seconds. They also tend to be very, very paranoid, very paranoid. And so even if you are being objective, meaning that your emotions are not involved, your opinions are not involved, you are going by the facts, okay? Even if you are objective with a person who is hostile like this in a family, that individual is still going to treat you in a very angry way. These individuals just can't get around their anger, and they don't see that they are the dysfunctional one. The last kind of a parent that you could have is the emotionally over involved, right? That one who's just controlling everything you do and living through you. And some research suggests that you can literally have one parent who meets all three of these criteria: criticism, hostility, and emotional over-involvement. And that can actually drive you insane. I once had a family consult with me from Canada, and one thing she said to me was this. She says, Tamara, I am the mom of this family, and I'm going to tell you, the only reason why we're pursuing you for a consultation is we need suggestions, we need recommendations on how to deal with our family trauma. And I moved into the situation, and I was under the assumption that's what we were going to deal with. Once I finally met with these people for a consultation, let me tell you, I could see that the mother was the biggest problem in the family. Not only was she hostile and angry and miserable and moody and judgmental and critical, but she was emotionally over involved. She was a deceiver. She was a liar. I mean, the list just went on. And the poor child in the middle between her mom, who's just all kind of ways, and her dad, who's naive and married to another woman and moving on with his life, I felt terrible for the child. The child was in the middle. Let me give you a demonstration of what this looks like, okay? So let's say you have a sister, and then I'm going to go to the chat box. You have a brother, and then your parent, so your mom, okay? And everybody is against you. So this is a family with high expressed emotions. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay, this is an example of how a family with high expressed emotion communicates. So we have, there we are. We have you, we have the sibling, the brother, we have mom at the bottom, and then here you are right here. Oh my God, this is backwards on my screen. But this is you, okay? And then over here are your sister, your brother, and your mom. And so the arrow is here to show you that all three of your family members are against you. And they're arguing and fighting and raging, and they're miserable, and they don't know what to do but target you. And so you get hit by your sister, your brother, and your mom, for example, with criticism, hostility, and emotional over involvement. Okay, that is in a nutshell what high expressed emotion, emotional families is or are. I think that's right. Okay, let me pause, go to the chat box, see what you guys are saying. Eartha Page, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Kyra Knows 14-4, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Thank you for the dabs. I love that. Okay, Cheers Jubilee says, sadly, it shaped my reactions, and I am a door slammer and go off alone and yell, but that's more an ASD meltdown. Okay, so Cherry's Jubilee, I'm not going to scroll back and get the beginning of that comment, but she's basically talking about how she's learned to kind of react emotionally to certain situations. And for those of you who aren't aware, ASD is an autism spectrum disorder. And so, Cherry's Jubilee, you are correct that if you are in a family where there's a lot of emotions, there's high conflict, there's high expressed emotion, it is likely that it over time will shape you. You know, think of a potter, right? You guys know what a potter is. They sit in their stool and they have that little machine. I can't think of what it's called now that I need to, but they sit there and they push the gas pedal and the machine, you know, spins the pottery or whatever, and you're molding it, right? Family interactions are molding you. And so you learn over time how to respond to conflict. That's why in these families with high expressed emotion, it's really easy for you to also become some of that, right? You can learn in quotation marks how to be the very same way over time. You don't mean to, and you really may dislike how your family behaves, but because you have been through all of these issues with a family who's highly emotional and very expressive with criticism, hostility, it's easy for that to shape you, right? So, Cherry's Jubilee, you are correct. It does shape you over time. It does. Nancy R says these kind of actions have created anxiety for me. Yes, absolutely. And let me just self-disclose and say, even as a therapist with 15 years experience working in the midst of really unstable families, I've basically seen it all. I still have anxiety when I'm in session and I'm listening to mom screaming over here, dad's arguing with mom, the child is on the couch in the middle of the room while mom and dad are screaming at each other, and I'm sitting there trying to observe the dynamic. It's emotional and it sucks you in, you know, and it heightens a little bit of my anxiety to a certain extent. So Nancy R, I really don't blame you for struggling there at all. Sean Hazel, thank you so much for clarifying that. Emotional intelligence. Duh. Now it makes sense. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate you. You're right. Awesome. Anna, hello and welcome. So glad to have you in your first live chat. Welcome. Glad to have you. Hi, Deb. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you in tonight's discussion. Yeah, I'm so sorry, B, and I'm glad you checked. Some of you guys are not getting notifications, and it's YouTube's fault. And it's so annoying. I'm so sorry. I'm glad most of you have been able to sign on tonight, though. I don't know what's wrong with YouTube. Thank you, Penny C. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Joe, hello, and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. You're welcome and welcome. Glad to have you. It has been a while, Joe. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Penny. Craig Samuels, hello and good evening to you. Welcome. Glad to have you. I hope things are going well with your book, by the way. Okay, I'm looking for comments. Oh, thank you so much, Deb. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Yes, Elizabeth. Just email me. Anna says, good Lord, you just described my mother. Oh, God. You know, having a mom like this is really difficult because if you have a mom who is highly emotionally reactive, if you say one thing the wrong way, in the wrong tone, at the wrong time, on the wrong day, in the wrong season, just forget it. You know, and I've seen parents like this in my practice. I've seen parents like this in the past when I've worked in agencies and in school districts. These parents are just so entitled. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. We're going to talk about what's wrong and what you're likely to see in your own family. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to manage these people. So I'm sorry, Anna. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. It's hard to have moms like this, right? And I may have said this last live chat as well. When you have a mom like this, it's so complicated, right? Because you may be the kind of person that, is saying, "Mom, just leave things alone, let it go. It's not that big of a deal." And the mom's like, "No, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." I once had a family, I'm going to say 5 years ago, when I worked in a school district, and I was one of the school therapists that they would call to come in and talk to the children. And I ended up running into a mom who was waiting on her daughter to come out of the guidance counselor's office. And she started talking to me about her daughter's issues and so forth. And then she started talking to me about how bad the previous therapist they had was. And here's one thing that rubbed me the wrong way. She started talking to me about this therapist. She started bringing up these things that I really didn't need to know about this therapist, which told me a lot about how she is and what her immaturity level is. And the sad part, she says, my daughter really liked that therapist, but I didn't feel the need to keep her with that therapist. I told her we're going somewhere else because she didn't return my phone call. One missed phone call led this mother to pull her child from psychotherapy and then put that child in another form of therapy. She also sued that therapist. Unfortunately, for the therapist, she had to go through a variety of legal disputes before the law says, okay, we're done with this. This is not legitimate, So I was like, nope, I'm not going to work with you. Forget that. But this kind of mom was very, very highly offended by people, very highly emotional. And the poor child was just like, Mom, let it go. Let it go. It's not important. And unfortunately, the mom was like, nah, we're going to go this way instead. So it's really difficult, Anna, when you have a mother or a parent who's highly emotional, because what I've seen in clinical practice is the kids are constantly saying, Mom, let it go. It's not that big of a deal. And the mother is, no, let's go this way instead. We're gonna explode this thing and make this thing bigger than it needs to be. And that's traumatic. Okay, that's traumatic. And by the way, I'm seeing that individual that I just told you about. Liberty Can, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight. Beautiful weekend to you too. That's so sweet. Yeah, my mom as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. Cheers Jubilee says, I got yelled at for falling off my bike. Yeah, these kind of individuals are like that too. Something small turns into something really, really big. All right, guys, I'm going to go back to the content in just a few seconds. Anna says, Tamara, my daughter pulls out her hair. Is this due to anxiety? Yes, it is. So trichotillomania, don't ask me to spell that. Trichotillomania is a part of an impulse control section in the DSM, okay? And the DSM is that so-called book that psychology has created to diagnose just about everybody in the world, okay? Or at least in the United States, I should say, to be more politically correct. Trichotillomania is pulling out eyelashes, pulling out eyebrows, pulling out hair on the body, pulling out hair on the body anywhere. We'll put it that way to keep it PG. And trichotillomania can be triggered by anxiety, but it can also be triggered by poor impulse control. So some kids that have ADHD can develop trichotillomania. Some kids with tics or Tourette's syndrome can develop trichotillomania. And Anna, just for your knowledge, it doesn't have to necessarily be one or two times. It could be multiple times over the years, or it could be once where it's really severe and really bad to receive that diagnosis, if that makes sense. So it sounds to me like some light bulbs went off for you, Anna, when I mentioned trichotillomania. In families where there's high expressed emotion, trichotillomania can also become an issue because, again, it's sometimes triggered by anxiety, and it's an impulse control disorder where kids just grab their hair, or adults, and they just pull their hair out, or their eyelashes, or their eyebrows. So it can get pretty ugly in families where there's such high expressed emotion. Penny C says, this has happened to me all my life when living with my folks. but it is not longer happening. It's no longer happening. But I still have the anger about my upbringing. Absolutely. Because Penny C, and for the rest of you watching the live chat, when you have a family where there's high expressed emotion, that leaves an imprint on your heart, on your mind, on your soul. And you're not going to be able to remove that just because you want to, or just because people say time heals wounds. That's not true for people who have been raised in families where there's high expressed emotion. That high expressed emotion leaves an imprint. It's like pressing your hand into Play-Doh, right? And when you bring that hand up, you're going to see an imprint, and it's not going to easily go away. That was such a corny analogy, but that's all I had. All right, guys, I love your comments. Okay, let me just get back to the live chat here. Let me get back to the content, give you guys some more information. So let me give you what you're likely to see in your family. The first thing that you're likely to see if you have a family where there's high expressed emotion is that there is absolutely no pause button or break system. The family just goes forward and goes in full force, right? There's no break, there's no pause, there's no pondering of what is getting ready to happen. There's just constant lack of control of impulses, right? There's no brake system. There's also sometimes one or several individuals in these families who are paranoid and very, very reactive. You guys have likely heard of paranoid personality disorder, where the individual is constantly paranoid. And the paranoia is so high that they perceive what other people say to them or do to them as having some kind of meaning that isn't there. And that triggers that reactive part of that family member. So let me give you an example just to clarify this concept. So let's say your brother, for example, so we're talking siblings now, your brother has always beat you up, talked to you bad, doesn't seem to love you, seems very highly reactive and angry. So let's say you say something like, "It was really nice to see you last week. You really showed up. And I'm just so happy that you're my brother." Your brother, being very highly reactive, being very emotional, being very paranoid, could step back and look at you and say, "What is that supposed to mean?" And then you say, "I'm sorry." And then your brother goes full force, "You've never liked me. Thanks for confirming that. I really appreciate you for making me feel stupid." And it'll go on and on and on. And so I've seen this close friends. I've seen this with neighbors that I talk to a lot. I've seen this in therapy with other people. And it's amazing how one paranoid individual in the family can just flip on you, right? So high expressed emotion in the family can sometimes include paranoia. Even if you are giving a compliment, it comes across to them as a slight, as a problem, as something negative that you are saying. The other thing that you are likely to see is this level of burnout within the family. And you may be the one who's burned out because you might be the one who's standing in the background watching your very highly emotional family go at it all the time. And so sometimes in these families, according to research, you can really walk away feeling burned out, right? Because you may not be that highly reactive, but your family is, and you're constantly on the sidelines watching. It can burn you out. It can. Let me also say too that if you are struggling with PTSD or complex PTSD, and this is according to research on trauma in the field, if you are in one of these families, it's very easy for you to relapse into a previous place that you were that's not healthy. So let's say you have complex PTSD or you have post-traumatic stress disorder PTSD, you have been able to improve, right? You're not having flashbacks all the time. You're not crying every day. You're not really avoiding those things that used to give you anxiety. So you're doing better. Let's say you go back into this family where they are just highly reactive and highly emotional. They don't know how to just have a logical, reasonable conversation. What is that likely to do to you? It's likely to regress you. And so research suggests that you're likely to relapse if you are in a family like this. You're also likely to see an emotional cutoff. And that's where you see all of this high emotion within your family, highly conflict people constantly going at it all the time. And all of a sudden, you stop getting phone calls. You stop getting phone calls. You stop getting text messages. You stop getting emails. You don't hear anything. It is radio silent, right? Where did everybody go? Emotional cutoff. No one's talking to each other. No one's saying anything. No one's doing anything. It's silence, you know? And that's dysfunctional. It's stonewalling. And sometimes it's even gaslighting. Oh, there's nothing going on. No, everybody's fine. No, it's not. It's not fine, right? Because everybody's too quiet in a family where there is really loud emotion. So what happened here? And so that's called, according to psychology, the emotional cutoff. There's also a family projection process that happens. And here's what that means. The dysfunctional family has a process of projecting onto each other, right? You're the angry one, not me. Why would you think something like that? You're so critical, right? Knowing that the critical person is them, but they're projecting it onto you. So it's called the family projection process. It's the family is projecting onto each other, right? Everybody's projecting something onto the family member. That's likely to happen in these highly emotional families. There's also a lack of what's called homeostasis. There's a lack of equilibrium, in these particular families of high expressed emotion. It's constant disequilibrium where everything is chaotic and all over the place. So there's a loss of homeostasis. There's no calm, none, no ability to be calm. There's also personality disorders in these kind of families. And we're talking about the histrionic personality. Let me break this down just a little bit for you guys. The histrionic personality is the individual who is very theatrical, very loud, very attention seeking, very dominating, sometimes very sexual and seductive, sometimes very aggressive without any boundaries, right? They tend to brag that they're the life of the party. They control the environment and they literally become upset. They literally become upset if they are not the center of attention. That's the histrionic personality. These are the individuals who cry really loud. They walk really loud. They, slam doors really loud and make themselves known. They don't know how to just sit in the back of the room and be quiet, humble, and modest. They're constantly in the middle of something because they kind of enjoy that stimulation. They enjoy being a part of the chaos and the turmoil and just being the center of attention. The spotlight has to be on them at all times. Can you imagine what it's like to deal with these individuals in a family context, right? And I'm sure some of you are like, oh my God, that's my Aunt Nene, or oh my God, that's my cousin, right? Histrionic personality, they are very, very emotional and they tend to have this high level of expressed emotion. They don't know how to be calm. They just don't. In the personality category or the personality characterization part of this whole theory of high expressed emotion, we can also add in antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. These two disorders are also often common in families where there are high expressed emotion. A narcissist constantly needs attention, and somebody who is antisocial is very argumentative and confrontational sometimes. Okay, let me pause, take a break, and go to the chat box. Okay, and I'm going to give you guys just a few tips on how to manage these kind of individuals. I've had to manage them myself, so stick around for that, guys. Okay, let's go to the chat box. Deb says, my daughter faked pulling her eyebrows out. She just shaved them when she was 13. She just recently admitted that to me. Oh my goodness. Deb, I know you had to be like, oh my God. Oh my, right? Kids do this. And as a matter of fact, as a child and family therapist, I see adolescents, and I have one adolescent who, as a little girl, used to literally shave her eyebrows off because she didn't like them. And so she would find razors in the house and just, and she would come to session. I'm like, what's different about you? Something's different. And she would play it off. She was maybe like 10 at the time. And she would play it off like, what do you mean? And I'm like staring at her like, what's wrong here? Well, she didn't have eyebrows. And one session she came back and didn't have eyelashes. I'm like, oh my God. So sometimes it's anxiety that causes kids to do this. Sometimes, aside from that, it's attention seeking. And so what do you do with kids who are pulling out their eyelashes and their eyebrows and their hair for attention seeking? You either hide all the razors and the knives or shaving utensils, if you will, or you let them do it and then deal with the natural consequences of that. It's a really tough situation. I often struggle at times with what to tell families where there's trichotillomania or attention seeking by, getting rid of natural bodily hair. Sorry, guys, my camera froze again. According to Deb, you can hear me. So I'm going to keep going. Okay. All right, let's go to the next comment. Robert Pukey Ray says, my family has lots of aggression that they don't acknowledge. The constant criticism is passive aggressive and passive sadism. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't blame you. The constant criticism is passive aggressive. Yeah. Constant criticism that's passive aggressive is also a part of families with high expressed emotion. They just don't know how to express the emotion, but it's there and you can feel the intensity. You can walk in the room and sense and I'm going to tell you in a minute what this is called, but you can walk into the room and you can literally sense the thickness, right, of the anger and the hostility. It's actually called into well, if I put it in a different way, it's called intuitive problem solving. It's kind of, you walk into a situation and you're trying to figure out what to do. You utilize your intuitive problem solving, which is your gut feelings, right? And we're going to get into that in a little bit, but you can actually walk into a room and intuitively sense that something has gone wrong here. They're not talking to me, nobody's saying anything, but I feel this intense hostility and I don't like it. So yeah, that happens for sure. Sean Hazel says, yep, that's my mom. Oh, that's difficult. Napalm 1334 says, yo, this is my mother and sibling. I get so exhausted dealing with them. Very dramatic. Yeah, it's very exhausting, right? And from a standpoint of professionalism, so for therapists and attorneys and things like that, it's really hard to deal with people like this because it's constant trying to manage how they see things and how they react to things and what they believe that's not true. And these kind of drastic acting people can be really threatening to your life, your life and your livelihood, because they take one small thing or they take one mistake or they take a very misunderstood situation, often from their angle, and they just blow it up and exaggerate it so big that you can't even figure out where things started, right? These kind of individuals are detrimental. And one of the suggestions that's coming up here in a little bit that I have for all of you, if you have experienced somebody like this, is to simply get out of their way, right? Because if you're caught in the road while they are driving through it, you're going to get ran over because these dramatic individuals often lack personal insight. Personal insight is completely gone. They don't know how to look within and say, now, wait a minute. Is this necessary? Wait a minute. Did I misinterpret that? Wait a minute. Could this have been the issue instead of that? Or, they don't know how to pause. Remember, I said earlier, they don't have a brake pedal. They don't have a pause button. It's not there. They're very impulsive individuals. So yes, they are exhausting. And they are even more exhausting to business owners, to doctors, practitioners, to therapists, to lawyers. I mean, we are exhausted when it comes to people like this, because it's constant clarification of facts. It's constant trying to keep them calm. It's constant trying to set the boundary and the tone. It is exhausting. And it's even more exhausting when it's in your family. Courtney Fraser, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. It doesn't matter what time you tune in. I'm so glad to have you still. Okay. Let's keep going. I'm looking for comments. Then I'm going to give you guys some further information. Let me also mention too, and I should have mentioned this earlier for those of you who are on this live chat, that these kind of individuals who live in a world all on their own, and they really do. They're like up here all the time. They're in a fantasy. Individuals who come from families of high expressed emotion. They're constantly up here. They're in their own universe. And that's why it's hard for them sometimes to pump the brakes and think. I'm so sorry, camera's freezing. It's hard for them to pump the brakes because they're in their own head. They're in their own world. They don't care about anybody else on the outside. They just react. These kind of individuals also have a flare of entitlement. I'm entitled. This is the disposition sometimes. I'm entitled to criticize you. I'm entitled to be hostile. I don't care what you think. And I'm also entitled to be emotionally expressive and overinvolved. That is sometimes the disposition in these individuals. I am entitled. I'm privileged. I get to do what I want to do. They often have what's called a false sense of self, a false sense of self. That is scary, right? That is scary. And here's why, before I go back to the chat, here's why it's scary. These kind of individuals will sometimes go off, get upset, become critical, become hostile, right? And they're ready to jump and call the police, or they're ready to jump and do something drastic because they don't know how to pump the brakes and pause, and they feel entitled, they feel privileged. There's nothing that's going to get in their way because they have the right to do what they want to do. That's scary, right, guys? Limitless Thinker, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says the memories of growing up like that is hard. Yes, it is. I am in my 60s and the memories are haunting long after they are gone. Therapy is necessary and awareness of self-care. Don't blame yourself. Very much true. Very much true. I agree. Thank you so much for that. Because I think, you guys in this live chat, I'm sure you can relate to these individuals being within your family, or maybe you've been in a relationship with someone like this. It really is important to be able to tell yourself, right? If you don't hear it from anybody else, this is not a me problem. This is a them problem. That's a you issue. All I can do is try to engage in risk management, meaning all I can do is try to engage in protecting what's mine, my sanity, my well-being, my mind, right? Everything I've worked hard for, my home, my privacy, my space, my self-esteem, my confidence. All I can do is protect all of that from you because you are dramatic and highly emotional. There's nothing else I can do. That is a you problem, and that's all you can do. Thank you for that. That was great. Deborah Pina, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. Haven't seen you in a while. Liberty Ken says family members, as in grandparents and others, are connected to all of this. Sometimes they are. Eartha Page says this was my exact life growing up. Now as a mom, I still hate them for the damage they've done. Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's damage. It leaves an imprint. Robert Pukey Ray says conflict personalities project that view on everyone too. So welcoming is a ploy to them. So welcoming is a ploy to them. Okay, I'm not understanding that part, but I do agree that conflict personalities project that view onto everyone too. Yeah, they're always projecting. They don't know how to not project. That's the issue. That's the issue. Deborah Pina says, I have my husband and then my mom that's always involved in our marriage. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes you have to protect your relationship, right? That's hard too. Courtney Fraser says, my dad told me that my mom said if I ever went to the hospital for mental health, I would not be coming back to home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To me, that's kind of abusive, Courtney Fraser. If I'm not reading too much into it, I hope I'm not. That's kind of abusive. I have in the past had parents that said the same thing. If my daughter gets hospitalized, that's where she's going to stay. She's not coming back home, And sorry, guys, for the frozen camera again. I think my camera's just overheating today. So I've had families like that, and they'll say something like, if my daughter goes to the hospital, she's not coming back home, I'm done. And then I would have to threaten, in a sense, even though I don't like to do that, I would have to say, okay, well, that's child abandonment. So I'll have to call Child Protective Services. There you go. Then the story changed instantly. Okay, looking for comments. Live Life says, I get triggered with volatile people. Me too. Me too. And walking away is the only way I can regulate my nervous system with those types of individuals. Yeah, that's so true. Arguing only makes it worse and it'll drive you crazy. Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me give you guys this tip too, that not only will arguments drain you, but arguments also provide a platform for that dramatic person, that overly emotional, dramatic person, to pick and pull apart everything that you say to the point of kind of boxing you into a corner, right? Usually, if my clients come to me and they say, hey Tamara, I'm going through this divorce, or I'm going through this parent-child conflict, and we're always getting into arguments, I'll tell the individual, my client, I'll say, don't argue with them. Completely cut off all communication, because they've already showed you that they are not in this to be fair. They have already showed you that they are emotionally dysregulated. And so again, that's a them problem. It's not a you problem. So because of that, the way to protect yourself from the dysregulated is to completely cut off all communication. So at least in the moment, right? Because if you get involved and you start arguing, now you're giving them meat to work with, and that's all they need sometimes. And quite frankly, that's sometimes in their heart all they want. They want some additional, I'm going to say, food or meat or something to work with that you give them. And sometimes you give them that in arguing. And so just don't do it. So Live Life, I think that's a great suggestion, and I'm glad you do that for yourself. Just walk away from it. B says, I wish just one family members that I'm dealing with were highly expressive in showing their emotions. Then I wouldn't have to guess or investigate why they have formed an alliance against my family. Oh, well, that's true. Some people who are highly emotional, right? They tell you right away what's on their mind, or they show you. I get that piece of it. I do, B. I get that. Thank you, Kyra knows. Yeah. Cherry's Jubilee says, my mother was judgmental, critical, and paranoid. Yeah. That's so hard to deal with. E-Clone Jitto 99, welcome to the chat. So glad to have you tonight. Says, what you are explaining is if I could speak, okay, I'm getting tired. All right, we're going to jump back into the content after this, I promise. E-Clone, let's try this again from the top. E-Clone Jitto 99 says, what you are explaining is exactly what I just went through with a friend. I told I was not like this behavior, told him how his emotions override his rational mind, and in just logged on right now. Oh God, E-Clone Jitto 99. That was all choppy for me. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, I'm going to take the beginning of the sentence. What you're explaining is exactly what I just went through with a friend. That is sad. I'm going to leave it there because I'm blanking on what that I'm not able to gather what that means, the rest of it. But E-Clone Jitto 99, I understand. Anytime you are dealing with a friend, a close person, a family member like this, you're not going to get anywhere with them. You're not. So your best bet, again, is to not even engage. Don't even engage. They're entitled. They have a false sense of self, and sometimes they feel privileged, you know? Okay, let me give you guys the rest of the content, okay? Then we're going to wrap up. So once I'm done doing this, I'll go back to the chat box. We'll wrap up. How do you manage these individuals? One important thing I tell my clients to do all the time is use what's called intuitive problem solving. Let's say you have a family member like this, or you're in a relationship with someone who's highly emotional, highly expressive, high conflict. All they know to do is fight. Always approach them as best you can using intuitive problem solving, which is really your gut feeling. It's your intuition. It's saying, I'm going to solve this problem by using what I sense is going on here. And this is where I'm going to have to use my natural intuition or my gut feelings to help me understand what I need to do with you. Sometimes you can walk into a room and sense that that person is angry with you. That's when you want to start thinking, okay, what am I going to do to problem solve this situation? How am I going to rectify this, not engage in it, or completely just get out of it? I'm going to walk away, as Live Life said, they do. Okay. So use intuitive problem solving. It works for me every time. Sometimes if I'm going into a session with a new family, I had no idea what's going on. They're new to my practice. All I have is what they told me on paper. They meet me for the first time. If I have a family sitting in my office, right, and I sense the animosity at the core of what's going on in that family, then I'm using my intuition and I'm sensing something is off here, right? There's something at the core of this family. And so then I have to transition into intuitive problem solving. I'm sensing that there's anger. So I'm going to have to choose some tools or choose some counseling skills to use that's going to bring down the anger and the frustration, intolerance that I sense right now in the room, you know? And so that's intuitive problem solving. The other thing that I suggest is to assess the situation, define it, right? And then clarify it. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say your dad is a fighter, right? He just loves to argue and be confrontational. He's unreasonable. He's emotional. If you are dealing with your dad and you think that you can navigate him in a calm, peaceful way, but then you realize he's yelling and he's screaming and he's chaotic and he's being too forward and he's being hurtful and harmful, you just want to be able to step back for a minute, assess what's going on. Is your dad feeling insecure right now? Is your dad feeling attacked right now? Is your dad the mean old dad he's always been? Is he critical? What is his problem today, right? Assess the situation. Then you want to define it, right? Here's what's going on, I think, right? Or here's probably what I think is going on. So you want to define it and then clarify it. Clarify it. Okay, so this is what I think is happening. Here's what I'm going to do to get out of this, because this is what I think is happening. Assess, define, and clarify. That may sound really difficult, but it really isn't. If you practice it, if you feel that at the core of the situation with another person is constant anger, hostility, and rage, but you have to deal with them. They start taking their emotions out on you. Pause for a second, practice pausing yourself, and then assess what's going on. Define what's going on in your mind, define it, and then clarify it, and then make your decision from there. I'm going to shut the door on you right now. I'm going to turn off my phone right now. I'm totally walking away from this. I'll talk to you later, or I'm going to have my assistants contact you because I'm out of this. We're not going to do this. Set that firm, healthy boundary for yourself. Okay, guys. The other thing is look at all possible solutions. Try to look at, oh God, I'm so sorry, guys. My camera is really, really spazzing out tonight. I'm very, very sorry. But let's get back to this, okay? But look at all possible solutions. Figure out, how can I get out of this? How can I maneuver this? How can I calm the storm? How can I derail this tornado that this person creates in every relationship that they're in? You guys most likely know that there's some people, everywhere they go, they leave a mess and they blame everybody else. The neighbors are a mess. No, they're not. You've created a mess with them. My cousin's the problem. No, she's not. You've created tension between you and your cousin. My husband was an idiot before we divorced. No, he wasn't. You just created a bad marriage. That store clerk over at Walmart hates me and I don't know why. Yes, you do. You were smart to him and arrogant. You guys have probably been in a conversation like that, or you've been in a situation where the person cries, I'm innocent, and you can step back and say, no, you're not. No, you're not. You create problems everywhere you go. You leave a mess here and a mess there and a mess there and a mess there, and so that's how the person is highly emotional, highly reactive, and hostile. Your best bet is to figure out what's a possible solution to this so that I don't get mixed up in this chaos, because I don't want to do that. Set firm boundaries verbally and physically. I'm not talking to you. We're done. Or we're done for the moment, or we're done for the month, or we're done for the year. I'm not talking to you. And then you want to also draw that boundary physically. You're not allowed in my space. Sometimes I've even had to do that as a therapist. In the past, I've had a client or two who slipped through the cracks, and they were very, very volatile, could have been very damaging to other patients and clients in the waiting room, could have been a danger to myself and some of the interns that come and practice with me. And so I've had to set in my past situations, I've had to set a verbal and a physical boundary. Do not come to this office without permission, or please contact me at the office number during regular business hours. That's my boundary. I'm saying no more. We're done. And then my physical boundary sometimes is, and you are not permitted to come back to the office. Okay. Contact me by phone. Goodbye. And so I've had to do that in the past. That's setting that verbal and physical boundary, because that other person is hostile and dangerous, and can be dangerous. The more angry that, there we go, we're back. Okay. The more angry the person becomes, the more dangerous they can become as well. So sometimes you have to set that physical and that verbal boundary, always have a backup plan with this person and proof, or with these kind of people. Never engage in a situation or a conversation or in a relationship with somebody that you can clearly see is highly emotional and not have a backup plan or proof, right? Email, text is proof, voicemails are proof, documentation is proof, and you want to always have a backup plan on how to deal with this kind of an individual. My best advice is don't engage. I tell my clients all the time, don't engage. If you engage with them in their highly toxic emotional state that they're at, then you're giving them meat to work with. You want to give them absolutely nothing. Let them hang themselves, because that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to create chaos and run and create chaos somewhere else, and then they're going to get coiled in their own chaos eventually, because that's who they are. They create their own rings. Keep in mind that individuals who are highly emotional, hostile, critical, reactive, sometimes they don't have good impulse control. And so they're not good thinkers sometimes. Sometimes they're very clumsy and messy, and they leave tracks of their behavior. So, don't get mixed up in that. Just don't engage. Don't engage. One last thing I want to add to you guys, because I know some of you have been in legal matters with family and relationships. When it comes to a litigious person, or a person who likes to pursue the law or pursue avenues that involves you, divorce, protection from abuse orders, restraining orders, lawsuits, whatever, when it involves those kind of things, the last thing you want to do is approach the person or deal with them. Set that firm verbal and physical boundary and stick to it. Don't engage with them. These kind of highly emotional individuals, they are known to run to the law. Research in psychology suggests that most lawsuits are created by or driven by individuals with personality disorders, like antisocial personality, or histrionic, or narcissistic personality disorder. So if you're in a situation in your family where the law is involved, custody, divorce, PFAs, all that kind of stuff, just don't engage. Let them do what they feel they need to do over there, and just be the honest, balanced, fair person that you need to be, right? Let them do what they need to do over there. Okay, let me go back to the chat box, guys, and we're going to wrap up. I apologize again for my camera. It's spazzing out. I could see that. Limitless Thinker says trauma takes years to work through. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Wild Lights Art says my mom has all three of those tendencies. Yeah, they're referring to criticism, hostility, and emotional overinvolvement. Oh my goodness, this camera's driving me insane. Okay. All right. We're going to get back to this. Then we're going to wrap up, guys. Okay, so Wildlight Art says, my mom has all three of those tendencies. She chased me with a knife Monday. Oh, Lord. She claims to everyone I'm irrational after reporting it. She's been doing this to me for 40 years, claiming she's helping me. My goodness, I'm so sorry. That is very, very traumatic. I think it's um, best in a situation like this, and I'm just offering you my humble opinion and suggestion on this. It's best to let her act out and try to just stay calm and stay behind the line. Stay behind a boundary line. Let her do what she needs to do. That's horrible. My God. Ugh. Welcome to the chat, Justice. Glad to see you tonight. Trader Chick, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Says advice for cutting off a narcissistic parent you still love. Tried keeping it surface level, but doesn't work. Really struggling. Ooh. All right. So I don't like giving advice if I don't have all the facts. So I'm going to avoid giving advice, and I'm just going to suggest that number one, it is often best to do some self insight building. So this could be through meditation, right? Just sitting by yourself and processing thoughts and writing things down. Or it could be done through journaling, right? You can journal why you still love that parent. Uh, Thirdly, it could be looking at some of the behaviors over a long period of time and writing down some things just to keep it in your mind. And then later processing how to set a healthy boundary. I don't like telling families to cut their parents off, but if that's your last resort, that's your last resort, and that's what you have to do. I would tiptoe in cutting the parent off. You also, with a narcissistic person, you want to avoid creating what's called a narcissistic injury, which is when that person who's a so-called narcissist, that person may or may not be a narcissist. But people use that term so much today, it's hard to tell. But to prevent that person from hitting back out of retaliation, right? You want to ask yourself, what is this person likely to do if I do this? If I do A, what is that person likely to do as B? And can I stand and deal with what they might do? So you want to process that as well. And then I also suggest therapy just for yourself to work through some of the thoughts and feelings and behaviors. I hope that was helpful. That's a hard one when I don't have all the information. Lou S says, being the family scapegoat sucks. Yep. How do you heal with a sibling that's a narc and controls an overly dependent parent to his advantage? That's difficult. I would have to know some of the details of that one too, Lou S. What I can say is, I'm just rereading this for a second. How do you heal with a sibling that's a narc and controls an overly dependent parent to his advantage? Unfortunately, in situations like that, we call that triangulation. And so let me give you this example. We talked about this earlier, guys. This is the family of high expressed emotion, where this is your family members and they're all coming against you. Okay, so if we erase one of those family members, oh Lord, come on, markers, work with me. If we erase one of those family members, right, then this is a triangle. This is triangulation, where you have two individuals who are basically against you, right? And so triangulation. So you want to stay out of that. Try to stay out of that. That's my only suggestion right now, is stay out of that triangle as much as you can, because you're going to lose. In situations like this, that parent may have to learn the hard way. And that's sad, but that's the truth. In some cases. Robert Redmond's Clip Channel, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. Always love seeing you. That picture reminds me of my grandfather. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, Courtney Fraser. Yep, I'm just reading. I don't blame you. I would have been agitated too. Thank you so much, Robert Redmond's Clip Channel. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Joe says, my family are like this, but there's no way they would be like that in front of a therapist. Yeah, some people try to hold back and reel in their issues in therapy. What some people do not understand, though, is that there are some really skilled therapists. They may be far and few. What do they say? Far and few between? That sounds backwards. You know what I'm trying to say. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. And sometimes there's some really good therapists, and we can see through you. Kat Sushi says, hello, Tam fam. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Wild Lights Art says something stupendous. Isn't that the right word? Why do I feel like that's a bad word? Wait a minute. I'm going to Google this. Wait. I'm going to Google this. Why do I think that's a bad word? No, it isn't. It's extremely impressive, stupendous. But I don't know. For some reason, it sounds like that could be offensive. I'm going to give it another word. Stupendous is not a bad word. Extremely impressive is what that means, but it sounds bad coming from, inside my own head. But you have said something that is very true. I will give it that. I will say that. You said sometimes therapy with these kind of families does more harm than good for the scapegoat. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't want to put a family that's highly emotional in a therapy session and think that they're going to get along, because we're going to just be recreating what happens outside of the office, right? Yeah. I know. I don't know why. I'm so sorry. I don't know why. Yeah. Yeah, me too, Deb. Me too. Sean Hazel says, thank you for clarifying these difficult situations people go through and looking for a way out. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You're welcome. These kind of individuals are terrifying, right? Because they can take your life down the drain really quick, because that's just who they are. Yanni Body TV says these types of people, I'm just waiting on it to not. There we go. Yanni Body TV says these types of people are usually master projectors and will project their insecurities, rage, and anger onto us. It's enough to make anyone crazy. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You could write your own book and it probably would be a bestseller with these people. Anna says, you're amazing, Tamara. God bless you. Such a sweetheart. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I bet you're wonderful too. That's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Don One says, I don't want to be around anyone who doesn't want me. Yeah, me neither. Exactly. I don't blame you. I'm like that personally and professionally when it comes to me every now and then. Limitless Thinker says, I'm glad I found this chat today. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad to have you. I hope you come back. Yeah, you're welcome, Elizabeth. You're welcome. All right, guys. I think I got everyone. I think. Soul Star, hello, welcome. And yeah, I said it right. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you tonight. Welcome. All right, going to sign off here in just a little bit. Soul Star says, I caught a live. Yes, I'm glad you did. Says, you have been a very important part of my healing journey. Much gratitude, T. Oh, that's so sweet. You're welcome. And thank you for letting me know that. That means the content that I'm producing is helpful. So I'm going to continue producing it. Thank you for that. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay. Cindy 911 Truth. Hello and welcome, says Trichotillomania. Thank you so much for spelling that. That'll take 9 tries before I get that right. Fairy Girl, I feel like I never highlight your comments, and please don't take that personal. I don't mean it that way. So Fairy Girl, I'm going to read this. Fairy Girl says, I was court ordered, but my parents only took me twice. Second time was with them. Court never checked if I was actually going, so never went back. Yeah, sometimes in these kind of family situations, you are court ordered to attend therapy, and the court system is so broken that sometimes they don't even check. Yeah. I'm going to pull from this fairy girl and just say that families who have very high emotions and are high conflict, there are kids who are developing into antisocial adults, and it starts with oppositional defiant disorder. Just briefly, oppositional defiant disorder is a child and adolescent diagnosis where the child is constantly oppositional, never listens, stubborn, rebellious, rude, disrespectful, often very hostile and angry, critical of others, and gets pleasure out of not listening, intentionally pushes buttons. That's really oppositional defiant disorder. Now, if that is not taken care of in these highly emotional families, then that child can slide into what's called conduct disorder. And that's a disorder where the child then kind of becomes almost like an expert with oppositional defiance, and they start doing things that is highly disregarding to other people's rights and highly disrespectful to the rules and the ways of society. They can sometimes engage in breaking rules and boundaries, like burglaries and setting fires and staying out after curfew, and sleeping around and threatening harm to another individual, robbery and burglary, and just getting into a lot of legal issues, right? Constant fights at school, constant school suspensions. This is conduct disorder. But if we don't take care of that properly, right, and the child doesn't get help, then they can slide into antisocial personality disorder. And from oppositional defiance all the way to antisocial personality disorder, the court system will often get involved, because somewhere along that spectrum, right, from oppositional defiance to conduct to antisocial personality disorder, the individual is just so chaotic, right? And the family is so emotionally dysregulated that the court has to get involved. So, Fairy Girl, thank you for mentioning that, because that's a very important part of families who are highly emotional. Sometimes the court system gets involved because the kid is just out of control. Sometimes it's not the adult, sometimes it's the child. Andronicus, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. It says, I have ADHD and pull hairs, pick skin. I wish I could stop. You know what that's called, guys? Let me make sure before I even say anything. Now, I do know trichotillomania is one. Pica is another. That's basically when you're basically eating and putting things in your mouth that's not supposed to be edible, right? It's a part of impulse control disorder as well as skin picking, right? And of course trichotillomania. So all three of those things, pica, skin picking, and trichotillomania, are all impulse control issues that are sometimes triggered by anxiety in these families with really high emotions. It's almost like a self-regulating behavior. In a sense, kids who cut self-harm, or individuals who cut or self-harm or burn themselves or whatever, that's almost like a form of impulse control problems as well. It's like, I can't stop the impulse. The cutting, the skin picking, the hair pulling, all of that kind of becomes soothing over time. Okay, guys, I think I got everything. Jesus loves us. Hello and welcome to the chat. Says, hey, Tamara, that was funny. I'm sure. I say a lot of funny things on my live chats. I try to, give you guys some breathing room to just laugh at times. Okay. All right. I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for dealing with me and my failing camera. I hope this live chat was helpful along the way. Let me know if you have any questions about any of this. Please post them in the comments section. Comments are also helpful to the channel. YouTube will make the live chat box available to all of you to see over the next 12 hours. Why they do that, I have no idea. But you'll be able to see all the comments and all the questions in the chat box tomorrow. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for being with me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.